tasked with rebuilding civilization in a post-apocalyptic future, but with a smart aleck of a robot to guide us? This is our job in this 2D craftervania adventure. But what the heck even is that?
Honestly, when I first launched Kentum, I didn't know what to expect. But what I found was something that genuinely surprised me, in a good way. It's got the bones of a survival game, but with the movement of a Metroidvania, the humor of Portal, and the polish of one of those downloadable gems that we used to find on the Xbox 360 store back in the day. So let's break down what makes this game work, where it stumbles, and whether or not it deserves a spot in your library.
So where do we even start? This game's got so much to discuss. We'll begin where it excels, because there's plenty to go over. Who doesn't appreciate a funny, comedic take on a companion character? You're greeted with a snarky, passive-aggressive character, Orb, and are immediately met with similarities to characters such as GLaDOS from Portal or Claptrap from Borderlands. This immediately sets the tone for the game in a very positive light.
Absolutely. The interactive cutscene at the beginning showcases a well-crafted and engaging sci-fi backstory that hooked me right from the start. That comedy we mentioned really adds just the right amount of flavor to what could have otherwise still been a solid intro, but kicks it up a notch, delivering that sort of 1-2 punch that makes you sit up in your chair and lean in for more.
One thing that immediately caught my eye with this is just how much attention to detail the devs put into it. For example, the respawn system isn't just a gameplay mechanic. It's explained through in-game lore as a cloning system. In addition, the healing chamber takes different amounts of time based on how much health you've lost. It's little things like these adding up that really help to boost the overall experience of the game.
And speaking of the little things, the game doesn't take itself too seriously either. There are comedic tooltips scattered throughout, and the developers even wrote themselves into the game's lore as a major corporation. There are also references to their previous game, Per Aspera, with collectibles you can find. It's this kind of self-awareness that makes the experience feel more personable.
One thing I dislike in many games is lack of direction and bad tutorial systems. Kentum, however, hits the nail on the head with that one. It introduces new mechanics and gives direction at a manageable pace, with distinct and clear pop-ups as you encounter and unlock new things.
Right, I have to agree that the UI is exceptionally well designed. For example, it's clearly communicated when you're low on health through multiple indicators. Your screen goes red, your health bar glows, and your AI companion beeps frantically. The map is clear and detailed, showing not just key locations, but even what biome they're in. Quest objectives are prominently displayed so you're never lost, and food spoilage is handled elegantly, with clear timers displayed in multiple ways, which, again, can appeal to multiple preferences for digesting that type of information.
An incredible core element to the game as well is its movement system. Very distinct in nature from other survival games, Kentum uses primarily movement and exploration that you would normally find in a Metroidvania game, here in their survival game, perfectly fusing them together. With vast flora and fauna, as well as unique terrain utilizing verticality, there's so much to explore, discover, interact with, and traverse through. This is a wonderful way to promote exploration in a unique way to most other games in the survival genre.
Continuing the Metroidvania theme, different enemies have different behaviors, and how you deal with them varies enough that you have to learn and remember multiple game mechanics to progress. And can we talk about the lack of a stamina bar? Once you unlock the dash ability, you can use it endlessly, As any of us that gets frustrated micromanaging stamina in other games knows, this was quite a breath of fresh air.
Last, but certainly not least, we have the art style. This game's art style feels very distinguishable from any other game in the survival genre, giving a phenomenal feeling of nostalgia for many awesome 2D platformers you might have found on the Xbox 360. While these games may not have been AAA titles, they had such charm to them stylistically, which is perfectly encapsulated here in Kentum.
Actually, before we move on to the quote unquote negative section of things, I have to mention that the developers are actively working on the demo, which gives me hope about the future of this game. And let me explain why. When we first played Kentum, the game was loud. This isn't usually a sticking point, but there was also no way to change the audio levels. There simply wasn't an audio settings option in the menu anywhere when we initially launched the game. However, the developers have added multiple sound option sliders in a more recent update, which shows they're actively adding features, which both nullifies this as a negative point, but also gives me hope for future development.
Now, it isn't all perfect. There were a few actual negatives we had about the game, which are still important to discuss. By far, the biggest problem was the controls. For someone like me who really isn't a big controller person, the game doesn't cater well to that. It's built primarily for controllers and leaves keyboard players as an afterthought, giving us awkward feeling controls that are unintuitive when playing with the defaults given by the devs. And there's not even a way to rebind these jank controls, leaving those of us who aren't controller fans out to dry.
Now, being a controller fan myself, I did initially play the game that way when we were showcasing it and testing it. But I do totally agree with that awkward feeling when I went back and tried to use the keyboard and mouse combo. For me, it was mostly intuitive with my left hand, and I had my right hand on the mouse. It seems like the intended playstyle was to eliminate the mouse entirely. Otherwise, you'll mostly be moving your right hand back and forth or navigating multiple menus to get to the tab you could have accessed through a single key press using the right side of the keyboard.
Besides that, we mostly only had minor frustrations that you might have in any game. For example, after a while, some of the sounds like the pickup sound and the low health warning could really get repetitive and annoying to hear over and over.
And even though you now have the ability to decrease the volume of these sounds through the multiple audio sliders we mentioned earlier, this can still be a small aggravation for those who are sensitive to certain sounds.
Another small criticism we had is the fact the cooked food doesn't stack. While it makes sense to prevent food spoilage from affecting full stacks improperly, it's simultaneously a nuisance when it comes to inventory management and a positive for preventing incorrectly calculated spoilage that a lot of survival titles fall into.
Depending on your playstyle, it can also take quite a while to unlock the dash ability, which significantly improves movement. The early game can feel a bit sluggish until you get this upgrade. I found myself constantly wondering if there was a vehicle unlock coming or any other system to help decrease travel times before I found and crafted the dash, even with multiple teleporters.
For those of you who may be streamers or just enjoy watching streams, I feel it important to reiterate that the early game can feel very slow and grindy before the dash from a viewing perspective.
That said, the comedy elements, and of course your own personal streaming personality, should help keep your audience engaged even during slower moments. And once you unlock the Metroidvania style movement abilities, the pace of movement picks up considerably.
So, is Kentum worth your time? With a fun companion, interesting storyline, a lot of thought put into it, comedic elements, a good tutorial system, fun movement, a well-defined UI, lots to explore and learn, a charming art style, and active development, this game truly has plenty to offer anyone who tries it.
As for the gripes, we only have one major point, and several minors. The one big thing being the inability to change keybinds. The lesser complaints include certain repetitive sounds, the fact that cooked foods don't stack, and how long it can take to unlock faster movement.
Despite control issues and a few minor drawbacks, this game was genuinely one of the best survival games I've gotten to see in quite some time. With a genre plagued by many games that just feel like reskins of one another, Kentum feels very refreshing, injecting fun aspects from completely different style games to create a masterpiece. I think the boldness of these developers to take on such an ambitious task and combine Metroidvania with survival craft games is incredibly commendable, and I believe has thus far turned out spectacularly. This results in an experience both familiar and fresh that truly leaves one feeling thrilled to discover more. So if we were to have to rate this, it's easily an S. If you're tired of the formula used by most modern survival games and would like to experience something different and new, I can't recommend this game enough. The demo for Kentum is free, so I highly recommend checking it out if you're interested. There's hours of content and fun to be had, even just in the demo. Props to these developers for putting together such a hit with this one.
And that's going to do it for our review of Kentum. Let us know in the comments if you've played the game and what your thoughts on it are. While you're down there, consider hitting that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more survival game reviews like this. Until next time, bye
Bye
everyone.
everyone.